Right. So I have three articles for you today, all from the Advocate. Now the first article, I don't normally do videos of cases that are pending, but because so often I'm just like, oh yeah, the Supreme Court is just going to hear it and they're going to overturn it, so I'm not going to get my hopes up. But this one, well, since we are aware that the Supreme Court is jonesing to overturn same sex marriage, I figured I would do this article. Texas judge who refused to officiate same-sex weddings sues to overturn marriage equality. So maybe they're going to decide that she actually has standing, since she actually recently refused to marry same-sex couples. I'm not sure. The Supreme Court likes to pretzel their brains, so anything's possible. Anyway, to the article. A judge in Texas who refused to perform weddings for same-sex couples has filed a lawsuit asking federal courts to overturn marriage equality. Because obviously reality should contort to what makes me feel good as opposed to people existing. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable around same-sex couples, fine. But first off, what the hell are you doing being a judge if you don't care about all people? And that your only job should be, who's guilty, or this is an amazing event, two people who are in love want to get married. If you don't care about all people, which you would think that a judge would care about all people, why are you a judge again? Anyway, Diane Hensley filed the suit against the State Commission on Judicial Conduct on Friday, claiming that the 2015 ruling that established marriage equality nationally, Obergefell versus Hodges, is somehow unconstitutional. I can't wait to find out what her reasoning is. The lawsuit states via the Texas Tribune that the federal judiciary has no authority to recognize or invent fundamental constitutional rights. Okay. So, I guess they're saying that unless Congress passes same-sex marriage, that it's not like, there is anything in the Constitution denying it. I mean, where do you think marriage as an institution comes from? There's nothing in it that says, yes, you have the right to marry, but only if you're straight. Seriously, what do you think is happening here? And, it's a fundamental constitutional right for straights to get married, but not gay people? Seriously, what are we saying here? Hensley's lawyer, Jonathan Mitchell, acknowledged in the filing that federal courts do not have the authority to overturn marriage equality, but that they are hoping the case will get picked up by the U.S. Supreme Court. Of course they do. Because the Supreme Court, like I said, is jonesing to have this overturned because, unless you happen to be straight, they want nothing to do with you. I'm very impressed that They're not taking on interracial marriage. I'm very impressed with that. Hensley stopped officiating weddings altogether in 2015 in response to Obergefell, as she said performing same-sex marriages would be incompatible with her conservative Christian faith. Okay. Number one, at least she's consistent. She's like, I'm not going to perform any marriages. So, okay. But I have yet to be told where the hell in the Bible it says gay people can't get married. I mean, the people who use, like I said, Sodom and Gomorrah is about pedophilia and not same-sex relations. And the people who point to certain passages, usually it's the Old Testament, which polygamy was a thing back then. So, again, where are we being consistent here? Anyway, she resumed performing marriages the next year for opposite-sex couples, while giving same-sex couples who came to her office a list of alternative officiants, some that were cities away. Okay. First off, she went back to marrying people. So, discrimination. Now, at least she was willing to give a list of alternative officiants, but as long as it's within the city she's in, that would make sense. Why are you burdening couples by sending them long distances just because you feel icky? Again, do your damn job. The State Commission on Judicial Conduct began an investigation of her actions in 2018, which concluded the next year with the commission reprimanding her and putting out a warning that she might not be impartial when it came to matters of sexual orientation. You think? Hensley then filed a lawsuit against the commission, accusing it of violating her rights under Texas's religious freedom law, and again stopped performing marriages. So she went back to taking her toys and going home because me, people are mean to me because I can't do what I want. I'm sorry. Yes, you have freedom of religion. That stops when your job is to marry people. I mean, find another job if the job description is just too hard for you to fulfill. Your religious freedom does not include bullying others or making life more difficult for others. That is not in anybody's job description. And, it's amazing to me how these so-called Christians, conservative Christians, seem to, ignore everything Jesus ever said. Because where the hell did Jesus ever say that, gay people can't marry? Granted, Jesus talked about a man and a woman getting married, but he never said anything about gay people not being able to get married. Anyway, Hensley then, and again, a trial court stopped her suit, and the Texas Court of Appeals upheld that ruling in 2022, finding that the commission was acting within its rights and was shielded from lawsuits by sovereign immunity. Well, ain't that a bitch? The Texas Supreme Court rewrote the code of conduct that Hensley was found to have violated in October, adding the single line, "It is not a violation of these canons for a judge to publicly refrain from performing a wedding ceremony based upon a sincerely held religious belief. Well, ain't that convenient? Imagine that, a bunch of bigots adding bigotry into the rules. Under the rules, state judges can refuse to perform same-sex weddings. The State Commission on Judicial Conduct responded in a December filing by stating that the rule does not give judges permission to continue performing opposite-sex weddings while refusing to marry same-sex couples. So, that's positive. At least we're forcing judges to be consistent. You don't want to marry some couples, you don't get to marry anybody. It wrote, the comment only gives a judge the authority to opt out of officiating due to a sincere religious belief, but does not say that a judge can, at the same time, welcome to her chambers heterosexual couples for whom she willingly offers to conduct marriage ceremonies. Hensley's newest suit seeks to circumvent the legal battle entirely by overturning marriage equality. It is a similar case to that of Kim Davis, a former county clerk in Kentucky who was sued by a same-sex couple for refusing to issue them a marriage license. Davis appealed the verdict against her to the Supreme Court and included in her filing a petition to overturn Obergefell, both of which the court refused to hear in November. So that is the end of that article. So watch this space. If I hear any updates, I will let you know. All right. So, in case you thought that that's the worst article I'm going to read to you today, no, it gets worse. Massachusetts removes a rule requiring foster parents to support LGBTQ plus youth. Now, let that sink in. Massachusetts. This is hardly a hotbed of conservatism. What the fuck? Anyway, to the article. Massachusetts has removed state rules requiring that foster parents support LGBTQ plus youth in their care after lawsuits from families and threats from the Trump administration. Okay, so they're capitulating to bigots. Woohoo! What could possibly go wrong? The State Department of Children and Families removed the policies Friday, replacing them with a general statement about parents supporting children's individual identity and needs, which kind of sort of implies that you don't shit on LGBTQ plus children. The change comes in the wake of 2 lawsuits from families who lost or were denied their foster care licenses after refusing to sign an agreement not to discriminate against LGBTQ plus youth, nor attempt to change their gender identity or sexual orientation. The Department of Children and Families' top priority is providing a safe and supportive home for all children in foster care, DCF Commissioner Stavern Miller told GBH News. We are also committed to ensuring that no one is prevented from applying or reapplying to be a foster parent because of their religious beliefs. So basically, they're saying you can be a foster parent. We're not going to make you sign a pledge that you're not going to be a dick to certain children simply because you don't agree with how they identify. But we're still claiming that you have to give a shit about your kids. So we still reserve the right to fuck you over if you treat children badly. Works for me. The previous DCF policies required that employees, foster parents, interns, volunteers, and others who interact with children and families must be respectful of how individuals asked to be identified and use the terms an individual uses to describe themselves. We can't even get regular parents to do that. This includes allowing foster youth to use restrooms or changing facilities that align with their gender identity, allowing them to dress in clothing or style their hair in ways that align with their gender identity, and allowing them to use their names and pronouns. Okay, what if you're just a dude who happens to want to wear a dress? That should be okay too, because it's clothing. If a guy feels better wearing a skirt for whatever reason, he should be allowed to do that. It shouldn't just be about gender identity. Anyway, the policies also explicitly mandated that foster parents and contracted service providers do not make attempts to convince LGBTQIA plus children/youth to reject or modify their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, because that would be abuse. So you can, find ways around that. This included not contracting with faith leaders who attempt to change a child's/youth's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. The department also supported youth seeking legal name and gender changes, as well as medical care and mental health services for children/youth provided in a manner that is culturally responsive and affirming, though none were required for their gender identity to be considered respected. So far, I think that the title is being a little harsh. Because, like I said, the way the new rule is phrased, you can still go after these abusive foster parents. The lawsuit prompted an investigation by the Trump administration, which accused the state of violating parents' religious freedoms. Right, because religious freedom means you should be able to bully whomever the hell you want. Donald Trump then issued an executive order in November that allowed Secretary of Health and Human Services and Human Gravel Pit, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to take appropriate actions to address state and local policies and practices that inappropriately prohibit participation in federally funded child welfare programs by qualified individuals or organizations based upon their sincerely held religious beliefs or moral convictions. See, that's the problem. You think that these are qualified individuals or organizations. The thing is, they're not. If they think that abusing children is acceptable for whatever reason, then they are not well qualified. This has nothing to do with your religious beliefs, as there are plenty of Christians who are able to respect people who are part of the LGBT plus community because, they actually follow Jesus and they love everyone. As opposed to the conservative evangelicals who think that unless you look and act like them, you aren't worth loving. Anyway, the lawsuit was brought by the Alliance Defending Freedom, Color Me Shocked, which has been designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. The conservative Christian legal advocacy group has been involved in several Supreme Court cases involving abortion access and LGBTQ plus rights, including Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, which overturned the right to abortion nationally. It also represented website designer Lori Smith in the 2023 case 303 Creative Incorporated versus Elenis, and baker Jack Phillips in the 2018 case Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado, which affirmed the right to discriminate against LGBTQ plus people on the basis of religion. Okay, before I continue, a little reminder of these cases. Well, Dobbs, they explained that one. The website case was completely a hypothetical. There wasn't ever anybody who was making this woman do shit. Actually, she didn't even have a wedding website yet. Everything about this was hypothetical. There was absolutely nothing about this case that the Supreme Court should have handled. They should have said, you don't have standing because none of this has happened yet. Nobody has forced you to create a same sex couple website, and you don't even have a wedding website up yet. So, no. But, this Supreme Court just was just so excited to make it harder for the LGBT plus community to exist that they took it anyway. Now, the bakery one. This Jack Phelps, which, by the way, he was review bombed after this. He decided that he allowed same-sex couples to buy cakes. He just didn't want to write the message celebrating their wedding because that's against his religious beliefs. Okay, if they were forcing you to participate in the wedding, then you would have a case. But you were just writing a message. I mean, that is not participating in a wedding. I mean, I just do not see what the problem is. I'm sure that that this person has created all sorts of messages on their cakes of activities that, whether they endorse it or whether they participated in it, but just don't care. But this is beyond the pale. Okay, cool. Simply because he didn't believe in it, because it was his sincerely held religious belief. I just cannot wait for liberals to decide it's their sincerely held religious belief to kick MAGA to the curb and not serve them in any capacity. And let's see MAGA cry and whine that their religious freedom rights are being violated or their freedom is being violated. They're being discriminated against because because the mean little liberals are forcing us to be consistent. Anyway, for LGBTQ plus youth, social affirmation and access to gender-affirming care aren't beliefs. They're life-saving. And I've done videos about that. But a lot of comments I get are from people who I think got their MDs from a Cracker Jack box or a Happy Meal. I'm not sure which. Who claim that they know better than scientists of how to treat anybody from that community. So, yeah. Wonderful people they are. The American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the World Medical Association and the World Health Organization all agree that gender-affirming care is evidence-based and medically necessary not just for adults, but also minors. Several studies demonstrate that depression and anxiety is alleviated in youth when they socially transition and receive treatments for gender dysphoria, which, like I said, I get plenty of armchair physicians who claim that they know better than all these organizations of how to treat trans youth or trans people, period. It's just mind-boggling how this issue makes people decide they know better than experts. Why is it always the issues that revolve around them, people desperately wanting their version of religion to be true, that that they decide that they're going to ignore experts? Because in other aspects of their lives, I'm pretty sure that they go to experts. I'm sure when they need a tooth pulled, they don't go to a plumber. I'm pretty sure they would go to a dentist. But when it comes to science, somehow, some way, they have a problem. Unless it involves them. Suddenly, they'll go to a specialist when they need certain care. But yet, they'll bitch and moan about the medical field because they don't vilify the same people they do. Anyway, over 30% of youth in foster care identify as LGBTQ+, and 5% as transgender, according to a 2019 study from Children's Rights, compared to 11.2% and 1.17% of youth not in foster care. And for people who think that that's a high percentage in foster care, think about why these youth are in foster care to begin with. I mean, it's possible that they've been kicked out by their parents because their parents are assholes, or their parents actually became abusive to them because how dare my kid not be a mini-me? So they end up in foster care. So it makes sense that there would be more trans kids in foster care than outside of it than you would expect, because they're the ones who are going to be kicked out for existing. Anyway, that is all I have for that article. But it's just too bad that when they went to LGBTQ+, this article only concentrated on trans, which I'm not saying that's not a big thing right now, but there are other letters that you're missing here. There are still homophobic parents, and there are still there are just parents who, if you identify as anything but cis and straight, you're a problem. So, yeah. I wish that it had reminded people that, homophobic parents exist as well. They do not respect their children's sexual orientation. So that's a thing too. I mean, that might be lesser than it used to be, but if you're going to mention the whole community, mention the whole community. But anyway, so it also doesn't say over 30% of youth in foster care identify as LGBTQ+, but they only mention the 5% that's trans. They don't mention, what the rest of that 30% identify. We still have 25% that's unaccounted for. So it's like they started with LGBT plus all around, and then they decided, let's just concentrate on trans. Okay, that's not a cool thing, but all right. So that, like I said, that is the end of that article. Now we have an update to my previous video where we were talking about the chest binders. You know, this idea that it's a medical device, which nobody ever claimed it is, simply because the bigots just cannot deal with the fact that some people don't like the way their bodies look. I even mentioned women wear bras, whether it's to work or whatever, or like it was mentioned in the previous article, sports bras exist because who the hell wants to run with their breasts, especially people who have bigger breasts? Why would they want to run like that? That hurts. So yeah, bras are a thing. That's not a medical device. So exactly how far are we going to take this shit? But anyway, chest binder vendors respond to absurd FDA warning letter. Clearly discrimination, of course. In an already small market, companies that sell chest binders aren't going to let threats from Donald Trump's Food and Drug Administration stop them from serving their LGBTQ plus customers. The FDA sent warning letters Tuesday to 11 companies: Trans Guy Supply, The Fluxion, Gender Bender LLC, The Shapeshifter Apparel, Marley Washington Design, Tomboy X, Flavant Streetwear, Early to Bed, Tom Scout, For Them, and Untag, formerly Trans Missy. I'm just bummed that they changed that name. I love the name Trans Missy. Threatening them with fines and seizures for not registering their binders as Class 1 medical devices. The companies have never been required to do so before because binders have never been considered medical devices before, because they're not freaking medical devices. There are absolutely medical treatments and procedures that do treat gender dysphoria, but trying to call a chest binder a medical device specifically because it is marketed towards trans people in order to control it and make it inaccessible is absurd and clearly discrimination, Xander Shepard, director of Gender Bender, told The Advocate. Regular chest binders for pre-op use aren't a medical device in the same way that the scissors used to give someone a gender-affirming haircut aren't a medical device, they added. Push-up bras, which can be a gender-affirming garment and also temporarily shift breast tissue into one's desired shape, would never get called a medical device. Maybe because the people in power want to see more minors' boobs, not less. And considering we're dealing with a president whose administration redacted hundreds of pages of the Epstein files, that's not too far off. FDA Director Michael J. Hoffman claimed in the letters that these products are medical devices because they are intended for use in the diagnosis of disease. No. Or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. Again, no. Or to affect the structure of any function of the body. Again, push-up bras qualify for that. Hoffman released information from the company's websites that claim the products can alleviate gender dysphoria. Okay. I mean, I did see a comment. Let me see if I can find it. From a trans mask person. That's not what I wanted. Let me just quickly see if I can find this. Oh, what am I doing? All right. Doop-de-doop-de-doo. Where is it? Hopefully I can find it. Because for some reason, I have to finagle it that so I can actually see that comment. I do not know why it's hidden. Here we are. All right. Let me just make this bigger so I can read it from afar. All right. All right, just respectfully chiming in as a trans masked person. Binders are used to alleviate dysphoria, among other reasons, and not all of us have bad enough dysphoria to warrant surgery and feel binders are enough. In my case, my dysphoria is mostly social, and so I only use a binder. According to their logic, though, as you said, anything cis people use to relieve their own gender dysphoria should be banned too, like boob jobs and hair implants and certain bedroom aids. All right, so there is that. All right. Now, where was I? All right, moving on. Back to the article. Gender dysphoria, which is a specific type of stress that arises when one's gender identity does not match their sex as assigned at birth, is classified as a medical condition. However, chest binders have no use beyond aesthetics. They only flatten one's chest, and the effects disappear as soon as the binder is removed. They are frequently used for costumes in both theater and cosplay, being comparable to shapewear, compression clothing, or sports bras. I hadn't even used the term gender dysphoria in reference to the binders on my website, a term this administration has had no respect for until they found a way to weaponize it against us, Shepard said. Crazily enough, I was actually cited for using the term gender euphoria, which isn't even a medical term, but simply the euphoric feeling that being happy about some aspect of one's gender presentation. And yeah, I would think that if you finally were able to feel more comfortable in your body, you would feel euphoria. Imagine that. Because the letter focused primarily on the language used to market the products, specifically anything that could be interpreted as medical treatment, Austin Bjorkman, owner and creative director of Trans Guy Supply, said that complying with the orders meant performing an audit of the company's website and updating the product descriptions. Nothing involving how they're made or sold has to change. Bjorkman said the company updated its language to clearly reflect that binders are compression garments, and in replying to the FDA, solidified our stance that we are not selling, as they claim, products that constitute medical devices. Our focus remains unchanged. We are deeply committed to supporting trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender-expansive people through affirming apparel and gear, Bjorkman said. We also partner with community organizations doing direct care by providing donations and discounted access to our products. We are still designing, manufacturing, and shipping, and we remain fully committed to taking care of our people. We will not allow intimidation or targeting to deter us from that work. The letters were sent as part of the Department of Health and Human Services' recent crackdown on gender-affirming care for youth. The agency announced at a press conference Thursday that it is issuing proposals to ban the life-saving care for those under 18. and to prevent both Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program from covering the treatment. Because, this administration just wants poor people to die. And if you're trans and you're poor, well, you definitely need to die then. Okay. While the HHS does not have the legal authority to implement either policy, a bill criminalizing gender-affirming care for trans youth and another bill banning Medicaid from covering the care were approved by the U.S. House of Representatives last week. Both bills now head to the Senate, where it's unclear if they have the support needed to pass. FDA Commissioner Marty Makary also announced the challenges to chest binders manufacturers at the conference, saying the supposed illegal marketing of these products for children is alarming. They're binders. What is alarming about it? The FDA will take further enforcement action as import alerts, seizures, and injunctions if it continues. I still want to know what's alarming about the fact that children use chest binders. I mean, are you this freaked out that children wear training bras? No? What's the fucking difference? Shepard noted that virtually none of Genderbender's sales come from underage customers, though the firm does get a good number of supportive guardians buying safe gear for teens, which is heartwarming. The product is a popular option because it is low impact and not any more risky than using a sports bra would be. Shepard said the company is consulting with lawyers before taking action or submitting a formal response to the FDA, but that with the way they're twisting things in the media, claiming we're marketing to children, I might add an age requirement to my website. Which is a shame because, kids could really benefit from chest binders. It's not just adults. Or maybe the age requirement will be teenager, but that goes without saying because, until you hit puberty, you don't need a chest binder. So, I don't think there's a legal reason we can't sell compression tops to people under 18, but frankly, I'm just afraid of what the crazies who believe we're targeting children might do, Shepard said. And again, that's so sad because people believe the stupidest shit. I bet all these people who believe that chest binders are somehow bad think that Pizzagate was a thing. Would not surprise me. The companies have been given 15 days to notify the FDA of what they are doing to address the supposed violations. If the agency is not happy with their responses, and I have this sinking suspicion that they won't be, they will have to register their products to continue selling them, an expensive and lengthy process that is unattainable for most small businesses, especially with the deadline to apply for a decreased fee pass. Even if they could apply, approval would be given at the discretion of the Trump administration, who wants to make life difficult for trans people. So there's that. For Bjorkman, the stunt is reflective of what's become a trend in this administration, where too often attention is redirected toward marginalized communities instead of addressing systemic issues that require accountability and real solutions. Targeting people who are already othered is easier than confronting uncomfortable truths, Bjorkman said. Fear-based narratives about trans people rely on misunderstanding and a lack of empathy, while diverting attention away from harm that is overwhelmingly perpetuated by those in positions of social power. Real progress comes from addressing systemic problems, not scapegoating communities that are already vulnerable. And the lack of empathy, I want to emphasize, because I've seen comments on my videos, other places, of people who honestly think they give a shit about children. that they care about their children's well-being. But because they can't wrap their little brains around the fact that trans people exist and that somehow cis children can know that they're cis, but trans kids can't, and don't see the hypocrisy there, they honestly believe they are being empathetic and that they care about children, when in reality, they only care about the children who think the way they want them to think, and not because they actually give a shit about children. Because if you gave a shit about children, you would give a shit about all children. Those who are trans, those who are cis, those who are straight, those who are gay. That is it. You cannot say you care about children and then claim that you only care about a small subset, but in order to make yourselves feel good, you just try to deny that the rest of those children exist. You just can't say that you care about children then. You can't say that you have empathy, because if you have empathy for the other groups, for the minorities. You don't just have empathy for people who look and act like you. That is not how empathy works. Anyway, that is the end of that article. And with that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to in this video, so I will see you guys in the next one.